In 1978, a 21-year-old bodybuilder with no acting experience walked onto the Incredible Hulk set. He was deaf. He was terrified. And Bill Bixby took him under his wing. For years, people thought they barely worked together. But Lou Ferrigno just revealed the truth. Bixby spent hours off camera teaching him how to act, how to move, how to feel. He protected Lou's hearing aids from the green makeup. He even helped him through 12-hour days that left a third of the crew sick or quitting. But the real story isn't about fame. It's about loss, pain, and a bond that changed both their lives forever. In 1947, when Bill Bixby was just 13 years old, something happened inside Grace Cathedral in San Francisco that people would whisper about for years. During a choir service, while dressed in his robe, young Bill quietly took out a slingshot and aimed it at the bishop. He hit him, right there during the service. This wasn't a childish accident. It was something he had planned. He was banned from the choir forever. That small choir stipend had meant the world to his family. His mother, Jane, who worked at I. Magnin & Co. as a senior manager, was trying to keep their family afloat after years of financial pain. The scandal embarrassed her deeply and hurt their already fragile reputation. But the moment also said something bigger about Bill. He wasn't afraid of authority. He'd rather break the rules than be quiet when something felt wrong. That pattern would follow him for the rest of his life. By 1952, Bill was 18 and facing the draft for the Korean War. He knew the risks. Over 36,000 Americans had died in that war. Instead of waiting for the Army to take him, he made a sharp move. He enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve. He served in VMA 141, a unit with a dark history. 18 of its 41 officers had been killed during World War II at Guadalcanal. Bill earned just $95 a month as a private first class. That was less than what he could make working any regular job. But staying stateside gave him a chance to survive and to dream bigger. While others his age were going off to fight, Bill was managing personnel files at Naval Air Station Oakland, staying close to home. That decision may have saved his life and his career. The reason this mattered so much goes back to his childhood. Bill grew up during the Great Depression. His father, Wilfred Bixby II, was just a store clerk earning $18 to $22 a week. That's about $350 to $400 today. His mother's job at I. Magnin paid a bit more, around $35 to $40 a week. But it still wasn't enough. When Bill was 8 years old in 1942, his father joined the Navy and left for the South Pacific. That left Jane to raise him alone. They moved into smaller and smaller homes. Bill often went to bed hungry. They relied on church food programs to get by. That's why the choir money mattered so much, and why being kicked out hurt more than just his pride. In 1956, Bill left UC Berkeley just a few credits short of graduation. He was broke, but determined. He took a job at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel for just $40 to $45 a week. That wasn't enough to live on, so he also worked as a lifeguard at the hotel pool, making another $15 to $20. He worked 12 to 14 hours a day and lived in a tiny 8-a-week room nearby. He ate leftover hotel food and spent any spare change on acting classes. But the Roosevelt wasn't a random choice, it was a smart move. That pool was a magnet for stars like Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe. One day, some Detroit ad executives saw him there and offered him a modeling job that paid $200 a week, 3 times what he made at the hotel. That moment changed everything. In 1959, he took his last $75 and bought a bus ticket to Detroit. He had been offered a role in a stage play called The Boy Friend. The Detroit Civic Theater could only pay him $25 a week. His rent was $20, so there was almost nothing left for food. He survived on beans and bread and lost 18 pounds during the production. But that role gave him something far more valuable than money. Talent scouts noticed him. When he got back to LA, they offered him $300 a week. That little $75 gamble turned into a full career. With the money he earned from the Detroit show, just $200 total, he paid for classes at the Estelle Harmon School of Acting. And that's where an agent found him and signed him. Just 2 years later, he got his first real TV job on The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. Then, in 1963, he walked into an interview and said, "Hi, I'm Bill Bixby." The producer, Jack Chertok, looked at him and replied, "No, you're not. You're Tim O'Hara." That's how he landed the lead role on My Favorite Martian, which ran until 1966 and became one of the top 10 shows on TV. It ranked number 10 during the 1963-64 season with a rating of 26.3, but the work was brutal. While other shows filmed 3 to 4 days a week, this one filmed 5 full days with up to 75 setups daily. They had no rehearsal time, and as soon as one episode wrapped, they were handed the script for the next. Every episode cost around $57,000 to make. That role made Bill famous, but it also made him worry. Would he ever escape the image of Tim O'Hara? To break out, he took small movie roles, even uncredited ones. In 1963, he played a tattooed sailor in Billy Wilder's Irma la Douce, alongside Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. The movie earned $25.2 million and was banned from TV for years due to its plot. Even though his role was small, he learned how big studio sets worked and built connections with top directors. In 1967, he got cast in Clambake as James J. Jameson III, opposite Elvis Presley. But things on set were chaotic. Elvis had gained weight, slipped in his bathroom, and hit his head. The shoot was delayed. Elvis was also miserable making another goofy musical. His entourage caused daily chaos, pie fights, firecrackers, water battles. MGM had to send warnings to control the madness, but Bill stayed professional. Elvis respected him, even borrowing one of Bill's favorite spoken word tracks, "Softly as I Leave You," for his concerts years later. The movie still reached Sanctuary 15 at the box office. The next year, in 1968, Bill acted again with Elvis in Speedway. He played Kenny Donford, a gambler whose addiction nearly ruined his friend's racing career. It was the first big movie about NASCAR and even featured real racers like Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough. Elvis earned $850,000 plus 50% of profits. Bill's character was complex, flawed, and emotional. It was one of his strongest early film performances. Around that time, Bill was tired of just acting. In 1970, during the courtship of Eddie's father, he started directing. The show, which ran from 1969 to 1972, featured him as Tom Corbett, a widowed dad raising his son, Eddie. The emotional chemistry between him and child actor Brandon Cruz stunned audiences. In total, he directed 8 episodes, including The Karate Story, which aired in January 1972. He earned an Emmy nomination in 1971 for that role. His directing style was careful, perfectionist, and hands-on. He knew what he wanted and pushed everyone to reach it. Back then, most lead actors weren't allowed to direct, but Bill made it happen. In 1976, he shocked audiences again. He played Willie Abbott in Rich Man, Poor Man, a man shaped by greed and power. This was a dark role, far from his warm, fatherly image. The miniseries averaged 34.9 million viewers per episode. His performance earned him another Emmy nomination. People were stunned to see him playing a morally broken man, but that's what made it powerful. One of his most surprising roles came in 1973 when he starred in The Magician. He played Anthony Blake, a real magician who solved crimes. What made it special was that every magic trick he did on screen was real. No special effects, no trick photography. He trained with magician Mark Wilson and learned sleight of hand, mentalism, and escape acts. The show lasted 22 episodes and introduced audiences to magic done the hard way. He kept directing too. In 1975, he directed Mannix episodes like A Ransom for Yesterday, which aired February 9. It centered around a $250,000 ransom, worth $1.4 million today. That show averaged 3.2 deaths per episode, one of the most violent on TV. Bill's direction focused less on the violence and more on the emotional aftermath. He handled 4 total episodes, including A Word Called Courage and Hardball, proving he could take on tough crime stories and still make them feel human. In November 1977, Bill Bixby walked into CBS meetings with a bold demand. He told them the Hulk series wasn't going to be a silly kids show. He said it would be serious, real drama. He didn't want bright colors or cartoon-like jokes. He wanted to show pain, loneliness, and struggle. At first, the producers didn't believe him. They expected something like the 1960s Batman. But when the pilot aired on November 4, 1977, it shocked everyone. It looked like a horror film, with sad piano music and dark shadows. Bixby played Dr. David Banner like a real man drowning in guilt. That pilot became CBS's highest-rated TV movie of the year, and just like that, Bixby proved his point. The full series started on March 10, 1978, and ran until May 12, 1982, with 80 episodes in total. Behind the scenes, it was a tough job. Lou Ferrigno, who played the Hulk, had to sit through 3.5 to 4 hours of makeup every day. On the pilot, he sat for 20 hours straight. After makeup, he still had to act for 12 to 14 hours in full costume. He couldn't even wash off the paint easily. They had to install a special shower in his trailer, and 2 assistants would scrub his back. Some weeks they worked only 3 long days. Other times, they worked 7 days without a break. His green makeup caused skin problems. The appliances on his face felt like jelly stuck to his skin. The makeup team changed several times. It wasn't easy. But even while all this was going on, Bixby wasn't just acting. He started directing episodes too. In 1981, he directed the 2-part story called The First, which became one of the most powerful in the series. That same year, something happened that would change Bixby forever. On March 1, 1981, he was on a ski trip at Mammoth Lakes with his 6-year-old son, Christopher. The boy developed a sudden throat infection. At the hospital, the doctor was busy removing a splinter from another patient's finger while Christopher waited. By the time they tried to insert a breathing tube, it was too late. Christopher went into cardiac arrest and died. Bixby said later, "My son suffocated while the doctor was removing a splinter from another doctor's finger." That loss crushed him. He said for 2 years he was filled with rage and couldn't think straight. Just over a year later, on April 7, 1982, Christopher's mother, actress Brenda Benet, committed suicide. She was only 36. She lit candles, lay down in the bathroom, and shot herself with a .38 revolver. Bixby and Benet had divorced the year before. Friends said she had been drowning in grief ever since their son died. She had also ended a relationship just 2 weeks before. It was too much. Bixby lost both his child and his former wife within 13 months. To survive, he threw himself into work. In late 1981, he started directing episodes of Mr. Merlin. One of the first aired on October 14, 1981, called The Cloning of the Green. The show only lasted 22 episodes, ending in March 1982, but Bixby directed many of them, pushing through his pain. People on set said he stayed warm and kind. even when he was clearly hurting. Directing became his way to survive. That need for connection and family had already started years earlier when he worked on The Courtship of Eddie's Father from 1969 to 1972. The boy who played Eddie, Brandon Cruz, didn't come from a stable home. Bixby took him under his wing. Off-screen, they formed a deep bond. Bixby called Cruz his real-life family. He once said, "I didn't know I had that part of me until after the show." That was thanks to Brandon. When Bixby lost his son in 1981, Cruz became even more important to him. Years later, Cruz named his own child after Bixby to honor their lifelong bond. On The Incredible Hulk, Bixby formed another surprising bond with Lou Ferrigno. Ferrigno was only 21 when he joined, the youngest Mr. Peacer, universe winner in history, but he had no acting experience. Bixby taught him patiently. During long night shoots, Bixby would quietly show Ferrigno how to express emotion. Over time, Ferrigno began calling Bixby a father figure. Even decades later, Ferrigno said the episodes Bixby directed were his favorites. That bond helped Ferrigno grow into a real actor. In 1988, Bixby returned as David Banner in a TV movie called The Incredible Hulk Returns. This time it wasn't on CBS, it was on NBC, and it introduced something new: Marvel's Thor. That was Bixby's idea. He wanted to connect the Hulk to a bigger universe, but the network wanted more action and less drama. Bixby pushed back. He made sure the sad piano music and deep tones stayed in the film. Ferrigno had to train hard again, gaining 45 pounds in 3 months to become the Hulk once more. The movie aired on May 22, 1988. It set the stage for future Hulk projects, while staying true to Bixby's vision. His skills as a director kept growing. He even got nominated for a Directors Guild of America award in 1977 for an episode of Rich Man, Poor Man, Book 2. That was shocking because the original author hadn't even written a second book yet. Bixby had to figure it out as he went. That episode, Chapter 3, stood out among the 21 episodes and helped shape the future of miniseries TV. Not all his projects worked. In 1984, he directed a pilot for a third MASH spin-off called Walter. It only aired once, on July 17, 1984, and it never aired on the West Coast because the Democratic National Convention interrupted it. The story was too depressing. Radar O'Reilly lost his farm, got divorced on his honeymoon, and became a suicidal cop. Critics called it unwatchable. One even said they'd rather watch Walter Mondale's speech. That same year, Bixby also worked on a show called Dreams. It was ahead of its time. It used stereo sound and music video styles. It starred John Stamos and Jamie Gertz. Bixby directed the pilot Kiss Me Red and an unaired episode called Suspicions. The show only lasted from October 3rd to October 31st, 1984. Just 5 episodes aired, but one song from the show, Alone, became a hit for Heart in 1987. The show was gone, but its music lived on. Between 1987 and 1988, Bixby directed 8 episodes of the comedy Sledgehammer. It was a parody of Dirty Harry, full of absurd jokes and over-the-top violence. Bixby even made a small cameo in one episode as a prisoner yelling, "I'm free! I'm free!" when the wrong door opened. It was strange, funny, and showed Bixby's range. In December 1990, Bixby married again. This time to Laura Michaels. It felt like a fresh start, but it didn't last. In 1991, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Just months into the marriage, she left him. Their divorce was finalized in June 1992. That was the cruelest part. He had finally opened up, and now he was facing cancer alone. Friends said he was at his lowest point. No family, no marriage, cancer spreading through his bones. In April 1991, Bill Bixby found out he had prostate cancer. It was the kind of news that could stop anyone in their tracks. But not him. He didn't slow down. He kept showing up to work, directing episodes of the hit show Blossom on NBC. Even when he was in terrible pain, even when the cancer had spread to his bones, bladder, and liver, by 1992, he still walked onto set. On November 20th, 1992, he directed an episode called Getting Lucky. The very next day, he checked into UCLA Medical Center for an experimental treatment using a drug called Suramin. He was taking pills and IV meds 5 to 6 times every day, trying to manage pain that never went away. Yet he never let the cast or crew see him complain. They were shocked, not just because he was working while dying, but because he still cared about getting every shot right. 2 years earlier, in February 1990, NBC aired a TV movie called The Death of the Incredible Hulk. Bixby not only played Dr. David Banner one last time, he also directed the entire film. In the story, Banner was hiding out in Portland, pretending to be a mentally challenged janitor named David Bellamy. He was trying to find a cure, and at the end, Banner died in a plane crash. It felt too real, too close. Behind the scenes, they had already written a script for a sequel called The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk, where Banner would come back to life, but this time with the Hulk's body and Banner's mind. They never got to make it. Once Bixby's cancer became terminal, everything stopped. In January 1992, CBS aired Diagnosis of Murder, where Bixby played a murder suspect. It was his final film role after more than 30 years of acting. At the time, he was also going through intense chemotherapy, yet he still delivered one of his most powerful performances. He filmed it in Vancouver, the same city where he had shot his last Hulk movie. No one could believe how sharp he still was. Mariette Hartley was also in the movie. They had worked together before. Watching Bixby keep going through it all left a deep mark on everyone there. On November 21, 1993, Bill Bixby died at 59 years old in his Century City home. For 3 years, cancer had torn through his body. But even then, doctors said he lived nearly 2 years longer than they expected. His death ended more than just a life. It shut the door on a Hulk sequel that fans had hoped for. The script for The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk had already been written back in July 1990. But without Bixby, there was no Banner. At his funeral, hundreds from the industry came. They didn't just see him as an actor. They remembered a man who kept showing up, who stayed kind, who gave everything he had, every day. Even in pain, Bixby never stopped helping others. He mentored young actors and crew members one by one. People said he crawled inside your mind to understand your problems before giving advice. And he did all this while taking multiple pain meds, enduring constant treatments, and still smiling. His co-star Brandon Cruz from The Courtship of Eddie's Father said Bixby never talked down to anyone. He treated everyone the same, even when he was dying. Years earlier, Bixby had also suffered through things most people would never recover from. In 1981, his 6-year-old son Christopher died suddenly during a ski trip. The next year, his ex-wife Brenda Bennett committed suicide. She couldn't bear the loss of their son. But Bixby never stopped working. He used work as his escape. People who worked with him said he didn't just keep going, he kept lifting others up while carrying all that pain inside. Even the filming of The Incredible Hulk had tested him beyond what most actors would accept. Just for the transformation scenes, he spent 2 hours in makeup, wearing painful hard contact lenses that had to be removed every 15 minutes. Ferrigno, who played the Hulk, spent 3 to 4 hours getting into green makeup every day. In the pilot episode back in 1977, Ferrigno stayed in makeup for 20 straight hours. Kids on set kept having their costumes ruined because the green paint rubbed off on everything. But Bixby never once lost his temper. He kept everyone steady, no matter how hard the days got. There was even a 4 a.m. filming day where a wild coyote stole Lou Ferrigno's breakfast. He had a giant omelet with 12 eggs sitting outside his trailer. And in the middle of that freezing early morning shoot, the coyote snatched it. Bixby didn't panic. He adjusted the schedule, made jokes about it, and carried on. It became part of the legend. No breakfast explains why the Hulk's so pissed. What most people don't know is that Bixby had personally trained Ferrigno. Ferrigno had never acted before, and because he was hard of hearing, it made things even tougher. Bixby took hours of his time off camera to help him with dialogue, positioning, even understanding emotions through movement. Ferrigno wore hearing aids, and Bixby made sure makeup artists never got green paint near his ears. Ferrigno said Bixby was like a father to him. He even watched Bixby's old shows to learn how to act. One day, Cary Grant came to set just to meet the Hulk. Bixby made sure Ferrigno got his photo. He was always lifting others up, always making sure everyone had what they needed. But the filming schedule for The Incredible Hulk was a nightmare. They didn't have their own soundstage. They were moving locations constantly. By the 4th season, a third of the crew had quit or gotten sick. Days ran 12 to 14 hours. Sometimes Ferrigno worked until 2 a.m., but Bixby never missed a day, never collapsed, never cracked. Even while directing Blossom just 5 days before he died, he was still holding it all together. Bixby and Ferrigno didn't share much screen time, but their connection was real. Bixby would act out how Banner felt before the transformation scenes, so Ferrigno could match the emotions without words. He was coaching him while also doing his own performance. That's why the death of the Incredible Hulk felt so emotional. You could feel the pain, not just from Banner, but from Bixby himself. When NBC realized how well that movie did, they planned more. The next one would have brought Banner back to life. But cancer ended all of it. Bixby directed his final Blossom episode just 6 days before he passed. Ferrigno says the lessons he got from Bixby weren't just about acting. They were about life, fame, work, dignity. And once Bixby was gone, the planned Hulk revival disappeared too. Without him, it didn't feel right.